All right, we are live. Yay. Welcome, you guys. Let me just check settings really fast. Yes. No. All right, video looks good. Audio looks good. Fantastic. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining. Welcome again. I hope your weekend is going phenomenal. Greetings. Hello, Patricia. Greetings from Poland. Oh, welcome. Hello, JJ. Hello, Babab. Elisa. Oh, fantastic. Already got a number of questions in here. This is great. We'll go ahead and get started in just a moment. I always like to give it a second, like 30 seconds to a minute, to allow people to get notified and come on in and that sort of thing. And then we'll go ahead and jump in. Make sure this is closed out. How's everybody's weekend so far? Hope y'all are doing lovely. It is absolutely beautiful out here. I don't know how I'm blessed for this kind of weather in November, but I will take it. Hello, Steph. Hello, Angie. Welcome. It has been a minute. Hi, Anna. Hi, Kelly. Lucas, Yara, Allie. Wonderful. And I love that we've always got a diverse crowd. I've got the familiar faces, of course. Always lovely to see you, but always lovely to see new people as well. We've had a jump in subscriber count lately, so I'm excited to see more new faces. This is amazing. All right. Oh. Let me. And as always, if there's any buffering or any issues with the settings, let me know. But we should be good. We should be good. I made sure also to turn off any ads or any potential issues with that. So no technical difficulties there. Wonderful. It's possible to see. Sorry, just checking one thing really fast, guys. And then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. That ought to do it. All right, let's go ahead and jump on in and get this ball rolling. Welcome again. Thank you guys so much again for being here for another round of live Q&As. I like to do this every Sunday, at least as often as I can. Sometimes it might switch to Saturdays, but usually meet on Sundays. But regardless, thank you so much for being here and joining. We just like to hang out and talk all things conscious manifestation, the law, everything like that, so that you all can have more of a better understanding to be able to apply this in the areas of your life and see the desires that you want to see changed. This is my favorite time of the week. I absolutely love coming on here and hanging out with you guys. So again, I appreciate you. I hope your Sunday is wonderful, or Monday, depending on where in the world you may be. Just a couple quick things before we go ahead and get started. I've got links in the description box, as always, to my resources. I've got my one-on-one coaching waitlist. I've got my masterclasses and workshops, and more information on my group coaching program. If you are interested in one-on-one coaching and are not already on the waiting list, make sure that you get your name on there, because I will be opening it again before the upcoming holidays. I know that this time of year especially can be not the easiest to navigate at times. So I'm absolutely here to aid and help as much as best I can. So all that information is down below. Also, I will be announcing things throughout the week. I've got a ton of new things coming up. I've got new podcast episodes, finally. I've got another masterclass in the works and all sorts of fun things like that. So Definitely keep eyes. I'll be posting in the community or in the Facebook group. If you're not joined, again, you can find all that down below. And I think that was it. Oh, also, just because I've had a number of people ask about this, I do try to get to as many people and questions as I can. I do aim to go in order. Sometimes the chat likes to jump around a lot. Sometimes I lose my spot. So I do apologize in advance if your question is missed, but rest assured, I do come on every week. So if I don't happen to get to it this week, then definitely come back around next week. And yeah, but I do aim to try to get to as many people as I can. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. We've already got, almost 70 people in here. Dang. And a number of questions already. So, yay. Hey, Missy, I love your content. Thank you, Alyssa. Can I revise my school and university marks so they would appear different on my diploma? I mean, yeah. Yeah, you can revise anything. You can revise absolutely anything. Yeah. See it in your mind, or there's different ways that you can revise, different ways that you can go about it. But whatever changes you would want to see, or things that you would wish had gone differently, absolutely, absolutely revise. Can I manifest appearing in someone's dream? Yeah, yeah, 100%. 100%. You can set that sort of intention. You can imagine things that would imply that that would be something that happened. Yes. Short answer is yes. Wonderful to see everybody. Oh, Steph's got a good question. This, yeah, this one can be helpful. Hi, Missy. Any tips for how to keep your cool when the 3D starts to change? I ran into SP out of the blue a couple weeks ago, but I freaked out and ran away. We've talked since, but I feel I may have accidentally missed the opportunity I was waiting for. There's been no movement, and I'm mostly still in the Sabbath, but the 3D is messing with me. I want to both hold on and let go. Mostly just trying to keep busy and not think about it, but I keep replaying the 3D moment and our past instead of being able to stay in imagination. Thanks in advance for your insight. Yeah, how do we keep our cool when the 3D starts to change, or when we, encounter what we have been imagining? And that, yeah, I know that is a common thing that can occur. Sometimes it's easy for us to get sort of sucked back into the 3D, right? Once we notice some kind of change happening, once we noticing something taking place or beginning to unfold, it's easy to feel anxious, or even scared, fearful of what's taking place. Um, and really, the more that you live in that imaginal act, it really is a matter of, and this is all coming back to self-concept, as everything does in these teachings. As your self-concept begins to change, you're going to notice your reactions begin to change. That's how we can tell that we've made some progress with changing our self-concept. So when it comes to the 3D and the interaction with the 3D, we're not going to be reacting perhaps in the same way that we would have before, right? So if we're not yet there physically in 3D, if we're noticing perhaps that we still have reactions based on that old state of consciousness, that old way of thinking, it's feedback. To make it as simple as possible, it's feedback. Perhaps there's still some attachment to old conceptions and ideas and beliefs, which is absolutely normal. We all go through it on this journey, but it's just indication perhaps of some things that may still be holding on to, maybe even buried under the conscious awareness, since a lot of this tends to be, right? And so it's just giving you idea of perhaps things that you want to imagine differently, areas that you want to focus on. Continue to imagine the end, continue to go to the end. That goes without saying. But if you want to revise the encounter, right? Revise the interaction so that it went in a way that you would have wanted it to go instead. I would absolutely recommend doing that. Um, and rest assured, you didn't miss the opportunity. That's fear talking. It might feel like that, but it's never the case that we've missed the opportunity. We might miss the mark. We may not succeed in what we've intended in the first go around, but you can always take aim again. You can always take aim again. So it's never the case that you missed it or you messed it up or anything like that. Um, Continue to go back. Continue to, and I know it can be challenging when we've got the 3D and all this stuff going in our mind, but continue to go back there in imagination. Revise the encounter. That should alleviate some of the, you know, uh, thoughts that are coming up about what happened. And that replay in your mind, play it out differently. Play it out in a way that you would have wanted it to go instead. But rest assured, as you change from the inside, you will be reacting differently. So you know that change is taking place based on your reactions. You continue to do so, you will continue to see a change in how you respond and show up in the 3D, and ultimately the 3D itself will change. Good question though. Now, that happened to me quite a bit. Da-da-da. How can I revise never dating someone? The relationship was toxic and it ruined us. I want to revise it as if it never happened and our lives continued on just as friends all this time and nothing changed. Good question. And I know for things like this, it can seem much more challenging, that there may be more resistance to the idea of revising something on this scale, right? Something that had a huge impact on us, perhaps, when it comes to an old relationship. Um, you may notice some resistance there, but that's why we're not trying to coerce ourselves into believing that something different happened. We're not trying to force ourselves to believe something different with revision. That's not really the approach that we want to take. This is really about letting yourself imagine, letting yourself go to that state in your imagination where it had been different, and what would be something that would imply that the two of you never started dating. Perhaps it could be, hanging out early in the relationship and you two have a talk about how, you just want to remain friends. It could be a conversation that you have with somebody in your imagination where you talk about that exactly, about how you spoke and the two of you are just remaining friends. So I would approach it like that, and in some sort of manner like that. That way, it sort of implies that everything coming after that didn't happen, so to speak, right? But that would be my approach. Again, we're just entertaining a new idea. We're just entertaining something like, what if this had happened instead? Is more of the approach we want to take with revision, so that we're not noticing as much resistance to the idea. I hope that makes sense. But let me know if you need me to clarify anything. And thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the super chat, Kelly. Oh, I don't see a message attached to. I don't see a question yet, but I will absolutely keep lookout for your question. Looks like that was a track. Yeah, I'll keep eyes out on your question coming up next. But thank you so much again for that super chat. Where was I? Northwest Wind, let me know if you received my email about the hypnagogic state. Just putting that out there. And welcome, sir. Good to see you. Hi, Misty. Greetings from Texas. So excited to be here. New subscriber, and I'm loving your channel. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Sorry, trying to find where I was. Hi, Missy. I manifested a text from my SP after 8 months of no contact. It was more of maybe we can have a coffee or not being quite distant. I got really anxious slash sad. What would you do? Answer, revise, thank you. I'm sorry, Bubba. Yeah, in this circumstance, I would absolutely revise. If I mean, first, it's wonderful to see that you saw movement there, that you had a text message come through, but if it is not in the way that you wanted it to go, or if it was received in a way that made you feel anxious and sad, I would absolutely revise it. Absolutely revise it. Um, and continue to revise it until you notice some alleviation of that sadness and anxiety, right? Because it may be that if you try to go straight to the end from a place that feels very sad and very anxious, it could be that there's a lot of resistance to that idea. So, um, yeah, revise it and you know do whatever you can or what you need to take care of you first and foremost. Sorry, Missy, I didn't mean to retract the super chat. My message was too long. I'll resend. No worries, Kelly. No worries. I'm on standby. Hello from New Orleans. Hello, Anne. Oh, I love New Orleans. I love that city. Do we embody the wish fulfilled in imagination or in our 3D reality? Thanks. Absolutely. In imagination. In this context, when we're talking about the law, uh, we embody that state in imagination so that it becomes our 3D reality, right? This- Whatever we imagine, whatever we sort of feel ourselves into, an experience in here is what ultimately becomes out here. I've been affirming and visualizing vividly that I have my dream job and so much money. Then some weeks later, without warning, I got fired from my current job that I don't like. Is this a bridge? Could be. It could absolutely be part of the bridge. I wouldn't personally concern myself too much with that because consciously, we're never going to know. We're never going to know what the bridge looks like until hindsight. We'll see it, after everything is already passed and unfolded. But before then, we're not going to know. But I would continue to assume that it is already done, right? So it's easy for us to get distracted by the 3D and start to look at all the things that may be moving. Uh, to the best of your ability, um, just continue to hold that assumption, continue to be persistent with that assumption that you already got your dream job, that you're making really good money, and that you just let yourself feel into that experience until it is solidified in 3D. What up? Aloha. Aloha, Jerry. Good to have you here. How quick is revision? When dealing with people in 3D, I've been constantly revising, but is it instant or only after interaction? Thank you so much. These Q&As are always so interesting and insightful. Thank you, Sina. How quick is revision? So how quickly do we see the revised actions in 3D? Is that what you mean? I'm assuming that's what you mean. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, it really depends. It really depends. Um, it can happen very fast. You can see evidence of what you had revised really quickly. Yeah, I've seen changes happen within seconds, literally. Um, now I know it can be challenging when we're dealing with people in 3D, but uh, keep yourself as firmly fixed on that revised end instead. Oh, Kelly, this is a really good question. How does revision work with living in the end? I understand. Sorry, my microphone's in the way. I understand revision rewrites the past to make it more favorable, but it's still putting focus on the old story instead of the end, i.e., marriage with my SP. Good question. And this is something I know for myself, I had a lot of aversion initially to revision because and I think to some degree we all have an aversion to the idea of going somewhere in the mind that was not favorable and that was not ideal. And that's completely understandable. But I mean, two things that we need to understand about revision. Number one, that we tend to live in the past a lot more than we realize. And what I mean by that is we're typically using instances and scenarios of the past to gauge what's going to happen in the future, what is possible, is this thing going to happen or not, based on our circumstances, in the past. So when it comes to a specific person, perhaps there was fighting or they showed up in a certain way that was not ideal. Well, that is going to continue, like we're going to continue to see that, and we're going to continue to get evidence of that, and we're going to continue to battle ourselves with that unless we revise it, right? So we're living in our past a lot more than we realize. So it's really, I mean, absolutely. If you are able to go to the end and there's no resistance there, you're able to go there, you're able to enjoy it, it feels good, then I would absolutely do that. There's no need to revise. But if you are noticing a lot of resistance to the idea of living in the end, if you're having a lot of hesitancy and doubt, based on how they showed up previously or based on the interactions, that's where revision will come in handy, 100%. And the second thing I want to note is, though it is, you know, dealing with something that was not ideal, what we learned and what we know about memories, right? And we have peer reviewed research on this. When it comes to memories, our memories are malleable. Our memories are changeable. That's not woo woo. That's not hippie talk. That is, we actually have studies on this. And what we're doing is when we recall a memory, there's a period of like an hour or two. It's a short window, but we've got an hour or two window where that memory is what psychologists refer to as unstable, or becomes unstable, which means that we can change the way that it happened. Basically, we can imagine it in a different way, and so that way, as the memory then kind of goes back and reconsolidates and goes back into the memory bank of the mind, we're now taking that new memory with us, right? So we have to recall memories in order to change them, otherwise they will not change. So that's kind of the thing, and why I talk so much about revision and the importance of it, because if something happened that was not ideal and we don't revise it, we're not going to be able, like, it's going to continue to play out within us internally, right? So I know the idea can be daunting or intimidating, but there is way more benefits to changing those terrible memories than just leaving them be. And I could absolutely speak from personal experience as well. But yeah. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you, Melissa. How to navigate hot and cold behavior. SP showing up but sporadic via text and sometimes in person. I set boundaries and I think he's conforming because of what he says unprompted. Then he goes cold for a few days. Yeah. Yeah. Um, Hot and cold behavior. Yes, it's incredibly annoying and frustrating, of course. But what we want to what we want to be aware of is hot and cold behavior in somebody else is indication of hot and cold behavior within ourselves. So it is, in effect, our own double-mindedness playing out in real time because everyone is us pushed out, right? So if people are showing up hot and then cold and then hot and then cold, it is due to our own double-mindedness. So how we navigate that is through continuing to be persistent with our imaginal acts. And to the best of your ability, don't give your attention to the 3D. I know that's easier said than done, of course, but the other thing to sort of negate that or navigate is revising the cold behavior, right? Imagining instead that he continued to show up in a way that is ideal, that he continued to show up in a way that is loving and kind and deserving, in every way that you want him to be. But if we give our attention to what we don't want, if we fix ourselves on the things that are not great, that's how we see this, yeah, this hot and cold continue to play out. So it absolutely is a practice, understandably, but continue to practice going within and shutting out the 3D, like at least twice a day for a couple of minutes. Practice literally shutting out everything in 3D and building on this world within your imagination. Like, don't take anything with from the 3D and with you, but continue to do that practice because, yeah, that's ultimately how we get the hot and cold to change is when we are no longer double-minded. Thank you for the super chat, you guys. Oh my goodness. My name is Spencer Stoddard, and I just wanted to say you are the greatest YouTube coach ever. You're amazing. Much love from Spencer. Thank you so much, Spencer. Oh my God. You are incredibly kind. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Let me know if you have a question. I'm more than happy to answer anything that you might have. I'll keep eyes out, but thank you so much for that. That is so sweet. And thank you again, Kelly. Thank you so much. You amazing. Thank you. I suspected revision was more for those that had issues with visualization, but I'm good there. Can we also revise on behalf of our SP for their past memories? Absolutely. Mhm. Yeah. You can imagine your SP showing up differently, so that their past was different, right? If you're talking about things that perhaps were traumatic for them or things that were, hard on them, you can 100% imagine instead that, they're telling you about how these aspects of their life went really well, right? Which would imply that whatever the thing that you want to revise, whatever that negative instance you might be speaking of, that no longer happened. I hope I'm making sense with that. But yes, you can revise on behalf of your person and anyone for that matter. Absolutely. Where was I? Hey, Missy, I have a question. How can I manifest my SP who is in Russia, who I don't have connections with, and have a huge age gap? Yeah, yeah. So how can we manifest something despite all of these circumstances that appear impossible, right? The circumstances that make it appear impossible. Um, well, what we want to understand right off the bat, what is really, really important to understand is that we don't want to take the circumstances of 3D into account when it comes to what we are imagining. So when you are imagining the end, when you are living in the end in the mind, you're bypassing all of that. The fact that he's in Russia, the fact that there's no connections and there's a age gap, like none of that being a factor. Um, and that's sort of what there's a very common phrase that goes around in this community: circumstances don't matter. And what that means is that circumstances never matter in your imagination. In your imagination, you can already be together with your person, and doesn't matter about any of it, right? We can bypass and transcend any perceived limitations. Doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how difficult or impossible it might seem. None of that matters because in your imagination, you can overcome any of that, right? So the idea is We're going to the end in imagination. We're skipping all the reasons why it can't happen, and we're continuing to live that experience in our mind because that is what becomes 3D circumstance. Everything will have to rearrange to bring you to that end so long as we stay in that end in our mind, right? And I know it can be challenging not knowing how is it going to happen, what would need to happen for that to unfold, blah blah blah, but truly and completely, as far as our conscious awareness, we'll never know how. We'll never know how the bridge unfolds, only that it does and always will. But yeah, bypass all the 3D nuance and reasons that it can't happen. D- Don't take any of that with you. Hi, Missy. Your ego backlash tips have helped. I've become good at catching myself before spiraling. Thank you so much. Yes. Wonderful. You are so welcome. I'm glad to hear that. Hi, Missy. Thanks for doing this every week. I always learn something. Thank you, Juan. It's good to see you, sir. I'm always happy to be here. That was my spot. Oh, where the hell was I? Sorry, guys. One sec. If you build a subconscious belief that you are able to manifest all desires within one day, would this come to pass? This will begin to bend how this reality operates considerably. Yes, it would. And yes, you can. Yes, you can. If that is the belief formed, if that is a genuine assumption, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, because the whole time thing does not actually matter. Um, It doesn't. I know the 3D plays out in what appears to be a series of events, but if you have the assumption that everything manifests for you quickly, yeah, yeah, you will absolutely see evidence of that. Mhm. I'm also starting to realize that changing my self-concept to align with what I'm manifesting is key to changing my reality. Thank you for helping me understand this. So grateful to find it. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Nelly. Of course, and you are so welcome. And yes, changing that conception of self is everything. That's key. That always has to be key, no matter what. No matter what we're trying to manifest. If we are not changed from within, we're wasting our time. We don't need to worry about trying to rearrange the surfaces out here before we have changed in here. You are so welcome. I'd like to hear your thoughts on other teachers versus Neville, Joseph Murphy, Joseph Murphy, Jose Silva, etc. Do you think they all work, or do any of them have limiting beliefs? Yeah, good question. I'm a huge fan of Joseph Murphy as well. Him and Neville were both students of Abdullah. They both learned under the uh, same man, Abdullah. So very very similar in what they teach. Uh, they both have different ways that they apply it, but it's the same teaching, right? So I would consider Joseph Murphy up there as one of the one of the godfathers of the law of assumption, basically. Um, so yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head seeing anything that I disagree with. Um, Same thing with Silva. A lot of the teachings, I mean, because these are teachings that go back thousands of years, right? Neville Goddard did not make any of this up. Joseph Murphy didn't make this up. These teachings go back thousands of years, right? Um, I mean, there are a few. there are a few things that some of these teachers talk about that I'm, not 100% on. Like, I love Florence Scovel Shinn. Um, she is amazing, and she actually predates Neville Goddard. She was talking about this back in the 19th century, but I think she was not behind the idea of manifesting someone specific. She very much bought into the idea of free will, which I disagreed with. Same thing with Abraham Hicks, which I disagree with. Um, but overall, they're all saying pretty much the same thing in different ways. So yeah, definitely recommend Joseph Murphy. Hello, JT. Hi, Missy. I just manifested yesterday a sad scene I had a few months ago. I have no doubts that I didn't manifest it, but I still feel like I don't have enough faith. Do you know why this could be? Y- Yeah, yeah. Even though you have this thing that played out, even though you see proof of a sad scene that you imagined months ago now playing out, um, yeah, because the ego fights change, basically. It can be easy for us to chalk things up for coincidence, right? That's in our nature to chalk it up to coincidence, to say, oh, well, this could have happened anyways, this would have happened anyways, that sort of thing. Um, what has helped me as far as faith building probably the most, aside from testing the law, which we absolutely want to test the law and continue to do so, but um, just the observation of my inner world and my outer world in my day to day as I was going about the day, and I became more aware, more observant of what I was doing and thinking and playing into in my mind. I started to see the 3D would always follow. The 3D would always show me proof of what I had been imagining. Where I was completely oblivious to all of this, of course, because 95% of the day we're in autopilot, right? We're operating mostly unconsciously. So it could be very easy to overlook all the things that we imagine. And then, when it comes to pass, also the time interval between when we leave an impression subconsciously and when it comes to pass, if it's been weeks or even months, we may not even be able to make the correlation between when that was impressed and when it came to pass. So all of these things sort of create um, ways that it's still easy for us to chalk it up to coincidence. It's still easy to doubt until you see enough that it becomes impossible to be coincidence, because there's only so many times something can be a coincidence before it's not, just statistically speaking. And when you get there, you won't be able to question it. You literally won't be able to question it anymore. Yeah. But also look at the past and all the ways in which the law worked for us in the past. Because if we are being observant and we're being honest, the law has always worked. It's always been working. It will always continue to do so. Oh my god, yeah, I finally caught you. Welcome. Yes, you did. Welcome, welcome. Hello, Missy. I have got a question. In Neville's Prayer, The Art of Believing, he says that people can only be manifested if they accept it subconsciously. What does that mean in regards to SP? Good question. This is one that comes up often because yeah, there is a part in Prayer, The Art of Believing where Neville talks about how if you imagine something that somebody would reject, that they can reject it and it would effectively boomerang back to you. But he's more talking about, um, like, if we're trying to wish harm on somebody, he was more trying to speak about the golden rule. If we wish ill on somebody else and it's something that they would clearly reject because nobody is going to accept being harmed, then that would actually be sort of something that you would wind up experiencing and not them. Uh, in what appears to be like a rejection on their part. Um, but that's so I mean, first, number one, if it's talking about love in a relationship, that's not usually things that people would object to. Most people are very much keen on the idea of a loving relationship. But also, it's important to keep in mind when it comes to Neville's books, right? There's two periods of Neville's teachings. What I like to call, when he experienced the promise, the mystical experience, known as the promise, um, in 1959, everything that he wrote and every way that he explained his teachings changed dramatically after he experienced the promise. So before then, there were still some human limitations that came along with his teachings. Not very many, but the idea that somebody can reject what you are aiming to do in imagination is not true, right? So every book that he wrote except for one, The Law and the Promise, he wrote those before he experienced the promise. So little things like that, where I mean he was more referring to the golden rule, but nobody is able to, in your reality, in your imagination, nobody can flat out reject can reject you, right? That's not a thing. So yeah, because after he experienced the promise, he was very he didn't mince words when he said anything is possible. Literally anything. Where was I? How do you go about dropping a desire? It's not something that is easy to do consciously. Yeah, no, it is not. And in fact, dropping a desire or detachment, as it's sometimes referred to, or letting go, doesn't usually happen consciously. It's difficult to force ourselves to detach from something that we really desire. Um, that's something that happens unconsciously. It happens organically. It happens without us needing to consciously do anything, right? That's going to be the natural outcome of us continuing to live in the end. Like persisting with living in the end, we're naturally going to detach or drop the desiring of something because then we are going, like, if you have it, you're no longer going to desire it, right? So if I, in imagination, am having this experience of something that I desire and I persist in that, I'll inevitably reach the point of the Sabbath, or it's already done. And from that place, I'll no longer have the desire because it's already done and you can't desire what you already have. So that's sort of an organic thing that happens on its own. But if we try to consciously and deliberately like drop it or detach, that's going to feel very challenging to do. Yeah, I don't recommend trying to go about it that way. Hi, Missy. I know we shouldn't focus on the how, but I want to make sure my desire comes to me in a harmonious way where no one gets hurt. Is that okay, or should I let that go and just stay in the end? Good question. Um, so we don't need to consciously like get ourselves in there with how this is going to unfold because again, consciously, we're not going to know. We're never going to know. That's all taking place through awareness, through I am, or the greater self. a higher self, as some call it. We're not the ones doing any of that, like, from the conscious mind. You can absolutely, set the intention with it that everything unfolds in a way that is harmonious, no one is hurt, everyone gets exactly what they desire and is, in the best interest of everyone involved. You can absolutely make sure to add that caveat or to imagine that it played out in a way where everything happened perfectly for everyone involved. Yeah. I'm finally getting it now, and now that feeling of naturalness is becoming more and more normal to me for a variety of things. Good things ahead. Thank you, Misty. Feeling pretty infinite. Fantastic symptoms. Yes, that is wonderful to hear. Yeah. Yeah, the feeling of naturalness is key. That is the key. Hey, Missy, how do I detach from a limiting belief that is coming from my culture slash is generational? Good question. Um, yeah, because I know for the cultural or generational beliefs, those tend to be more of the core beliefs that we form, stemming from the earliest childhood. Like our earliest memories probably involve some kind of influence around this belief. But you can absolutely still change it. I mean, regardless, it doesn't matter. I know it may feel like there's a bit more resistance to the idea because, it was instilled it's been instilled and conditioned over a period of time, but regardless, I mean, the same way that we would change any belief, right? Uh, imagination. Imagination is the creative power that we can utilize to get us out of any kind of mindset. We can transcend any limitation or circumstance or whatever it may be in imagination. And that is how we change our beliefs. Point blank. If I'm living in the end in imagination and it feels real, then I don't need techniques, right? Because if I already have it, why do I need to affirm? Oh, where did you go? Or should I say how grateful I am? Good question. And yes, um, we don't need to do techniques. If you are already living in that end, if you already feel as if this is done, um, there's nothing you need to do consciously or deliberately. No, no. Because yeah, if you already have it, you wouldn't be affirming for it, right? You wouldn't continue to do so. Yeah, that's exactly right. Um, now, if you have a natural feeling of gratitude that comes up for you and you want to express that gratitude, by all means do so. But you don't have to like consciously and deliberately keep pushing yourself to do techniques. Um, absolute no. It's not the techniques that manifest. So, but good question though. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Thank you for the live. When I am doing the I am meditation, I'm feeling some intense sensations around my third eye lately. Does this happen to you? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's happened. Um, definitely got intense sensations and even some crazy pulsations, images that was centered around that third eye area, the mind's eye area, right? Yeah. Yeah. That is normal. At least from my experience, that was normal. Thank you again. And thank you for being here, Sarah. Hi, Mina. Hello. What can we do if we feel hopeless about the situation? Oh, oh, that part sucks. Um, I think the first thing that's helpful to note uh, when it comes to the feeling of hopelessness is just knowing that you're not alone. Um, I think I can speak for many people in saying that we've all had these moments of hopelessness. We all have these periods that are a downturn, and in it, when we're in the thick of it, it can certainly feel impossible, like hopeless, never going to happen. Um, but that's never true or never the case. Like ultimately, that's all stemming from the state that you may be occupying. But nothing is hopeless or impossible at all. So long as you're able to imagine something different, it can change. Always, always. I think it may be beneficial to continue to do things to help you build your faith and trust in the law, which is, I mean, something that we should be doing anyways. It's always going to be helpful for us if we come from a solid belief and understanding. It's going to alleviate 99% of the anxiety, fear, all of that. It's stemming from doubt, right? Um, and if you need to, first do whatever you can for you. Like, do something nice for yourself. Do something to help you feel better in that moment. And maybe it's not even related to what you're trying to manifest. Um, but see about doing something to help yourself first, right? Do something lovely, do something that you feel would, whatever that may be. Whatever that may be. Whatever you enjoy doing to help you, alleviate some of these feelings of sadness and just help to get your mind focused on something else. But that said, if you need to cry and you need to have a moment to react, absolutely do so. Don't feel like you need to bottle it. Don't ever feel like you need to bottle it. Suppression is never going to help. You can always come back and revise later. So take care of you first is the long-winded point that I'm trying to make. But yeah, ultimately, nothing is actually hopeless. It does not matter the 3D circumstance. Wow, the people in this chat are me pushed out. Yup. Yup. How are those adorable baby kittens we got to see a couple of weeks ago? They are fantastic. They're huge. And this is actually my last day with them. They are going to their forever homes this afternoon, which is bittersweet, but is actually the very best part of the whole foster experience. The adoption day is the absolute best thing in the world. They are going to fantastic families where they are going to be loved and cherished and adored, and it makes everything worth it. It makes all those nights of having to get up every 2 hours, it makes it so worth it. All right, where was I? Do you have any videos on how to forgive SP and the old story? I feel like even if he comes back, I would still feel hurt. Absolutely. 100% recommend revision. Revision is the art of forgiveness. Truly, uh, that's how we, alleviate or eliminate these feelings of hurt and guilt and anger and sadness. Revising, yeah, changing that so that he had always shown up differently. So any of the videos that I've made about revision, and I made a few of them. So Mhm. Hello, Missy. My SP moved into a different country in June. When I imagine my SP during SATs, I see a specific bedroom slash house layout. Is my mind making it up, or could this be accurate? Uh, yeah. So you're naturally seeing a house layout in your imagination. Yeah, that's accurate. That's accurate. Our mind is never like making it up, as in like what we are imagining is false. That's never a thing. Your imagination is not fiction. It's not fantasy. It is very much real. Missy, if I find myself in an absolutely seemingly impossible situation, example, I've been trying to manifest someone back for a year who found a new girl and is in love. It's so hard. Any advice? Yeah. 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 The pull of the 3D is so strong with us because to us the 3D feels so damn solid and real. Um, so I completely understand the struggle that comes with trying to imagine something different than what the physical senses are telling us is true. That said, to the absolute best ability, I would take the attention off of whatever the 3D is showing. If that means unfollowing on social media, if that means taking a social media break, if that means, you know, doing something for yourself that will help to, you know, keep your attention more on something ideal instead of wandering back to the circumstances at hand, I would do so. And I know the thought can seem scary when we are, asked to remove our senses and to remove ourselves from the 3D circumstance, like, unfollowing someone on social media. It can seem very scary, understandably, but the last thing that we want to do is continue to take in all of these things that we feel are true and we may react to in a negative manner. Um, that's all that's going to go. The 3D is not going to serve us in any way if we are still very reactionary to it, right? Um, Number two, there's absolutely nothing impossible here because we're talking about the imagination. All of the teachings that come from Neville Goddard and the Law of Assumption are referring to imagination. I got a video coming out about this tomorrow. When we speak of circumstances don't matter, time is an illusion, you are the operant power, we're speaking about imagination. So in that world, none of the circumstances are impossible. Nothing is impossible. So we do not have to take the conditions of the 3D and put it in our imagination and use it as a way to bar ourselves or keep ourselves from actually going there in our minds. Because we can do anything in our imagination. We don't have to take any of this crap with us. So again, I know it is incredibly difficult, but as best you can, take your attention away from the 3D, whatever in any kind of means as much as possible, and don't take these circumstances with you when you go into your imaginal scene. Because when you go into imagination, it should be for the experience. We're imagining this to have the experience of it and to enjoy the experience of what that would feel like and be like, right? If you and SP are now together, you're in love, everything is wonderful, you can absolutely live and occupy that world in your imagination. And that's what I would continue to do so. 70 times 7. Rose, welcome. Happy Sunday. Lucas, I like this. Using impossible to the situation is inaccurate. They can literally break up tomorrow. The impossible feeling is just your anxiety speaking. You don't have to be you don't have perfect imagination. God does. Bingo. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. The feelings of impossible it's all stemming from our anxiety and fear. Nothing, nothing is impossible. Where was I keep losing my spot. I'm so sorry, you guys. Happy Sunday on a Sunday afternoon, Miss Renee. Thank you, Mohammed. Welcome. Welcome. Mm. Do you think revision will heal incurable diseases? For example, if you revise a doctor's appointment going differently or revising the situation that gave us the disease? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And many people have. Many people have been healed from incurable diseases or, pulled through in when the doctor said that they wouldn't, miraculously. But yeah. Yeah, you can revise anything. Oh my god! Missy, back in September, I wrote that my wife filed for divorce. Well, she didn't. In fact, we've been talking more and more and more. And the more I surrender to my imagination and God. We're not there yet, but close. Bradley, that's amazing. And I remember vividly you coming in here. And yes, I revised that on the spot. And I do that for a lot of these comments. If it's not ideal, I I don't accept it. That is incredible. Power of revision, guys. That is incredible. Thank you for sharing that, and I'm so thrilled for you and for your wife and the many, many happy years you 2 of you will have ahead. Post-promise Neville gives me ecstasy, not gonna lie. Same, same. Yeah, I know a lot of people are not really big on what Neville was teaching when it came to the promise. The law is naturally way more popular, but I love me some post-promise Neville. Yeah. With the paradox of intentionally manifesting using techniques, which feels like effort, and passive detached thoughts, which seem to produce results in the 3D. How to deal with the frustrating paradox. Yeah, yeah, and I do have a video coming out about this one too. How do we deal with the paradox of trying to manifest or deliberate manifestation when uh, it feels like when we try to consciously manifest, it feels like effort and willpower. Um, and then those totally passive thoughts that come in seem to manifest like that, right? Uh, yeah, yeah. And I do have a video coming out about this shortly. I just recorded it a few days ago, actually. Um, and the first thing, if you don't already have a meditation practice, I always strongly recommend doing so. Like, there's so many benefits to meditation, you know, not including what we hear about in manifestation, not including all the things from the law, but just in general, there's so many benefits. But one of them being the ability to relax, the ability to, you know, be more deliberate with where we're putting our attention and focus, right? Uh, yeah. So any kind of practice with that, but first and foremost, we want to practice on like if we are going to go into a sat session, if we are going to revise something, we want to first get ourselves as relaxed as possible. The key word is relaxation. That should be the first thing. If we're feeling too anxious, too uptight, and we try to imagine from that place, it's not gonna feel good. It's not gonna feel good. So, um, this is a practice of getting ourselves relaxed and just enjoying the worlds that we are able to create in our mind. Because we can create anything in our minds, and it could feel just as good and just as real as the experiences that we have here in 3D. That is absolutely possible. We can give ourself the feeling and experiences that we desire to have here in 3D. We can do that. We all have this power. We all have this ability, and that's what it's about. So it's a changing of the mindset. It's a shift in how we are perceiving all of this, right? From I need to do these techniques to get this change in the future to I'm going to learn to enjoy myself and my imagination because it feels good. Because it feels good, right? If it's something you desire, then it's going to feel good to imagine. I would hope, right? But it naturally it is a practice. Because, yeah, there's, of course, that part of us that wants to attach to the idea of getting something, uh, because the irony is once we can let go of that whole notion of needing to get it and just learn to imagine to enjoy it, that's how it shows up in 3D. It is a practice, but continue to, y pick up a meditation, a daily meditation practice if you don't already have one, and just let yourself go within purely to enjoy an experience. And it could be about anything. Just let yourself go there. That's how we continue to build this muscle. And just as kind of a side note, I do have my next masterclass is going to be mainly focused on this, like how to utilize your imagination, how we should go about navigating this world in imagination. So, yeah, I got more content coming out about this soon. Hello, Apollo. Y'all are amazing. Where was it? I don't have a question, however, I just wanted you to know you've put all of this in a way that I can understand. Thank you for that. Your fundamentals explained a lot. Oh, thank you, Anne. Thank you. And I'm glad. I'm glad. That's always my intention. I know these concepts can seem so abstract and confusing. I really aim to break it down in a way that makes sense. So I'm glad. Good. In terms of ego backlash, can our ego influence the subconscious to trick us to respond against our manifestation, i.e., deliberately sabotage it? Thanks. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it does. Well, it aims to. Um, that is effectively self-sabotage, right? When we do things seemingly, like, unconsciously or, in a way that sort of blows everything up for us. Yeah, that's what that is. But regardless, you can always revise it. You can always change it. So it doesn't matter. Even if we self-sabotage, even if we, unintentionally do something to make things worse, not better, we can always always change it. I've learned that the change will slash does happen. It just takes persistence in the state. Then it will become normal to remain there. When it's normal, the shift is seamless. You're already there. Boom. Yes. Symptoms. 100%. Missy, how can I revise that I never met someone and he never existed in my reality in no way, shape, or form? Good question. Yeah, this is one that comes up a lot. How do we revise, you know, never having met somebody when, it seems to be kind of a bit of a paradox there, right? Or a bit of a challenge. Um, in that case, I would first get familiar or first ask yourself, how would I be different or what things would have been different if I never met this person, right? Like, would I be feeling different in a certain way? Would I be showing up differently in a certain way? Um, I'm not sure what the context is, and you don't need to go into it, but imagine instead the ways that you would be different if you had never met this person or this person did not exist, right? That's personally how I would go about it. Get familiar with in what ways things would be different now and imagine yourself from that place. Um, and sometimes it can even help to just, you know, take an eraser, like an imaginal eraser, and just erase the first time ever meeting them. That has absolutely been effective for people. Another thing I've been curious about, I've noticed that things I have flippant thoughts about tend to manifest quicker. For example, thinking of a coworker. Yeah. Yeah, that's common. Yeah. The things that we don't give a whole lot of attention to, yeah, sort of those flippant thoughts are usually what shows up the fastest because there's no resistance anywhere to what you've imagined there, right? Like there's no double-mindedness when it comes to, a passive thought about a coworker versus, an SP or abundance or something that is, seemingly a lot of story and perhaps resistance there for people. Yeah. Mhm. I've heard that it doesn't manifest faster just because you affirm more often, that it's enough to affirm just once in a while. I have to admit, in my mind, I feel like I have to affirm a lot to get it. Yeah, no, we don't. No, we don't need to form that assumption necessarily that we need to affirm more to get it faster. Um, that's not objectively true. I mean, it may be an assumption you have or a belief that you or someone has, but it's not on its face objectively true. No. Mm-mm. You can imagine something once, never think about it consciously again, and it will manifest like that. The amount of times we are speaking it is not the important thing. What's most important is what you are feeling. Like with the when you're affirming a lot, like, are you feeling into it? Is it helpful in that you are able to get into and maintain that state better, right? I hope I'm making sense, but if that's the case, if you enjoy affirming lots, if you are feeling better because of it, then by all means. But if it feels like work, if it feels like a chore, if it's something that is not enjoyable, if it feels stressful, um, I would drop it. I would drop it. Does the bridge of incidents include things like causing trouble slash unfavorable circumstances? Recently, I was led to something risky I would never do and been feeling like I really want to move. Good question. It can, the bridge can show up in ways, or some of the events may look unfavorable at first. Um, it is possible that that happens. I'm not saying it does always happen or that it's going to show up in ways that are unfavorable, but um, the bridge unfolds in a way that feels most natural to us, basically. 'Cause every desire that we have already comes with the means of expression, how it is going to be expressed. Like, so that's why, again, we don't have to worry about the how and all of that because it's already taken care of, right? Um, but it's whatever way feels most natural to us. So if perhaps you feel that the only way you can get something you desire is through unfavorable means to happen, um, that's an assumption I would change if that's perhaps the case. Why was the Bible misinterpreted so bad? It seems like a blunt explanation to the law and the promise would have prevented many of the wars and distortions the current Bible interpretations caused. Good question. I mean, it's a 2,000-year-old game of telephone, basically. And from the Western mind, we tend to interpret things more literally, um, whereas the Bible came from the East, where a lot of it was supposed to be, you know, metaphor. It was spoken in allegory, right? Wasn't meant to be taken in the literal sense, but from the Western mind, it was very much taken in the literal sense. So, yeah. Good morning, Missy. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. If you want to manifest something but have a hard time visualizing or even thinking that you can have it, can you still manifest what you want? Absolutely. Absolutely. Doesn't matter. You don't need to visualize. Number one, um, if you struggle with visualization, if it's not a strong suit, that doesn't matter. There's many other techniques that you could use, um, or ways that you naturally imagine, right? So if you perhaps are more familiar with like inner conversations, if that's something that you naturally do in your mind, use those, right? Uh, so we don't have to try to struggle in order to manifest something. It doesn't need to be a visual picture in the mind. And if you have a hard time thinking that you can have it, well, yeah. I mean, if that was something that barred us from manifesting, then I don't think any of us would ever manifest anything. It, if the condition was we have to believe it 100% right off the bat, yeah, no, that's not a condition. Regardless of any of that, you can still manifest. Doesn't matter because all that we're doing here is having the experience of being that person who has it, right? Being the person who has your desire in your imagination. And let yourself experience and let yourself accept it. Let yourself assume that this experience is true. This experience is real, right? And the more that we continue to do so, it's going to take on a form of its own. We're naturally going to start to believe it, basically. So yeah, don't let that deter you. John. Can someone manifest me a Range Rover Evoque dark blue? You got it, sir. You got it. You guys are the best. Where is where was this? I've totally lost my spot. Damn it. When texting in 3D, I delete unwanted text. Do we respond from the news story in 3D, assuming it already happened with them, or wait for them to contact us with new story? Unsure if first is desperate. Um, if I'm understanding your question correctly, if we are interacting with someone in the physical world, yeah, we always in imagination want to be in that end. Like in imagination to us internally, it's done, it's fixed. Um, and we're just letting the 3D do its thing to unfold it, right? So we're kind of going about our day, we're doing what we would normally do, but in our minds, in imagination, it's fixed and it's done. So we're not concerned with how the 3D shows up. Once impressed and once it's done, literally doesn't matter what transpires in the 3D, right? So long as we keep ourselves fixed there, so long as we continue to persist in that end. Um, so yeah, but you don't have to do anything if that's what you're implying. Like you don't need to take any kind of action that is forced and deliberate. You don't need to lift a finger, as Neville would say. Oh, sweet Northwest Wind. I see that you revised that too. You are awesome, dude. How can I stop my manifestation from playing at the back of my head all the time? It's nothing negative though. So how do we stop ourselves from imagining? Well, we can't really do. We're always imagining. If that's what you mean. Like we're always imagining something. Really, we are just practicing being more deliberate with where we go in our imagination, what we do in our imagination. For most people, we've kind of just let our mind go wherever it wants to go, do whatever it wants to do, entertain circumstances that are not ideal. This is about just practicing being more deliberate with where we go in our imagination, what we will choose to entertain and what we will no longer choose to entertain. Um, so if you're having something kind of on loop in your mind and it seems like you can't break it, uh, the way that we combat that is to imagine instead deliberately what you would want to play out. If I'm understanding your question correctly. But yeah, if you want to if you want to change the way that your thoughts are coming in, it comes through a change of belief or assumption basically. The thoughts that we have, the reactions that we have all come from the state of consciousness. So through a change in the state of consciousness when we occupy somewhere new in our mind, that's going to produce different thoughts. That's going to produce different reactions. So I hope that made sense. And if I misunderstood your question, let me know. What made you comfortable? What made you get comfortable dumping the idea of free will for others in your reality? I'm still not sure about it. Good question. Yeah. And I understand that Yeah, it can be the idea of others not having free will can be daunting at first. Um, what made me drop it, what made me realize that free will is not real is understanding that everyone was showing up in a way that I assumed that they would show up. And when I would change the way that I assumed people would show up, they would change. I saw that countless times, countless times. When I changed the way that I would assume things, like my assumption about how this person would act or this person is showing up like this, when that changed, they would always reflect that. They would always, always reflect that. So it got to a point where I couldn't just continue to chalk it up to coincidence, right? Everyone is you pushed out. Everyone is yourself pushed out. I know that that may not, that's one of the most controversial and difficult things for us to grapple with um, in this community, but it doesn't make it any less true. So the way that you can start to prove it to yourself is start to really note and pay attention to how you assume others showing up in your world. Like, what are your assumptions about other people? And note how they are showing up. So you'll start to see it, basically, is what I'm saying. You will start to see yourself. Everyone is showing up in the way that I assume them to show up. And if I change that assumption, they're gonna change. How can excuse me. How can I get out of a no movement loop? Though I know there is always movement. Good question. How do we get out of a no movement loop? So I know it's a very common thing in this community to say that there's always movement. Um, I always look at it as everything already is in existence, right? Um, to say that there's always movement, like we're still stuck in that linear thinking, right? Everything already is existing right now. What are we putting our attention on right now? In this present moment, what are we bringing into awareness? Are we continuing to bring into awareness that there's no movement? Well, or are we assuming that there's already this desire that is played out? Or are we assuming that they are showing up for us in this way? Are we imagining that they are already showing up? If it's about another person or a job, whatever it might be. Um, you didn't specify, so I'm not sure. But what are we assuming? What are we imagining? And what are we bringing into our awareness, our present day, present moment awareness? Because that is what will continue to be reflected in 3D. So to get out of a no movement loop, turn the attention away from no movement. Instead, everything already is done. Everything already is done, right? All things already exist right now. It is already finished. We don't even need to think of it in terms of movement because it's already done. I hope that makes sense. You are so welcome. You are so welcome, you guys. I'm legit kind of crushed that Bebop and Rocksteady are gone. Oh, yeah. Yeah, adoption day is not always the easiest, but it's so incredibly worth it. They're going to the most amazing homes. And this is what it's about. I consider myself the babysitter, basically. I'm the cat sitter until they're old enough to go home. Hello, IK. Hello, hello. Hi, Missy. What is the difference between persisting in the wish fulfilled versus detaching? Thank you. Good question. This is one that comes up often because it sounds like, well, how can that be? How can it be both persist and detach? That those are two separate things. Um, we persist in the wish fulfilled. We persist with imagining and continuing to imagine and experience what that thing is that we desire, whatever it is, until we reach a place of detachment. Detachment happens naturally. We can't bring about detachment through conscious force. Well, it's going to feel very, very challenging to try to do so. But detachment is what naturally happens as we continue to persist in this new state of consciousness. Because as we persist in this new state of consciousness, what we're going to notice is that we no longer have to consciously and deliberately keep doing that. It's going to start to become second nature. That new state is going to become so familiar to us that it becomes the new dominant state. And from that, everything just starts to happen automatically. We don't have to even think consciously and deliberately about it. So we naturally detach from that old state of being, from the old stories, limiting beliefs, limiting assumptions, all of that, all of the things that no longer serve us. Yeah. So it is persisting in imagination until we detach from that old state entirely. If another person is manifesting me and I am manifesting my specific person, which one will I end up with? You will end up with whoever you imagine yourself to end up with. In your reality, you are the operant power. In your imagination, in your reality, nobody has the ability to, you know, nobody has veto power. Nobody has the ability to one up you in your reality, right? Unless we give that power away, which we don't do that. um, but yeah, in your reality, it's whatever you imagine and whatever you assume is what will happen. If somebody else is trying to manifest you, but yeah, in your reality, you don't. Yeah, that's not a thing. Where's my spot? Sorry, guys. I'm getting distracted by some of the conversation going on here. It's fun. Y'all are fun. You know that? All right. Focus, Missy. Focus. Focus. Much love to you, Rebecca. Hello. Hey, Missy. Is assuming your desire a conscious decision, or is it something that comes naturally after imaginable acts? Um, so is assuming your desire a conscious decision? It's both. If I'm understanding your question correctly. Um, First we make the conscious decision or the conscious uh, we take the conscious actions and imagination to imagine ourselves in those acts, those desirable acts, right? And that's deliberately us and putting our attention in imagination on what we desire to experience. Um, the more that we do that, the more natural it becomes, right? After we have continued to imagine, it becomes natural to us. Like that is how we move into and occupy a new state of consciousness. Is how we make a state, a desirable state, a dominant state, right? So that it becomes second nature to us. Yeah. But first, it's a deliberate conscious decision, but then it becomes subconscious. It becomes natural for us to do. Can you talk about timing? I've been manifesting changes in SP for months and not seeing changes, even though I feel like I'm doing everything right. So, starting to lose hope since he hasn't acted. Good question. I think that this is something a lot of us struggle with. When it comes to the time and timing, this is a sneaky one. This is a very sneaky one because if we are perceiving it as it's been months and nothing's happened, if that's what we are continuing to fix our attention on, uh, that is actually what continues to be manifested. We continue to manifest not having, right? Because time is not a thing in imagination. We are conditioned to linear time. We are very, every human is conditioned to the idea of linear time. We've got calendars, we've got clocks. Feels like things are moving in this linear trajectory. Um, that's not what is actually going on. We're living instead moment to moment. We're selecting states in moment to moment to moment. So it's whatever we are conscious of now. Like I am kind of going back to awareness, and I am is a present tense consciousness of being. So, what are we conscious of being in the present moment, in each moment? So, if we are noticing ourselves consistently going back to it's been months, it's been weeks, it's been this, it's been that, and they're still not here, well, that's going to be continuing the process. Like, we're just going to continue to impress and unfold with no movement, basically. So, we really want to be careful about that. It's been X amount of time. Um, I know we perceive it that way, but the more that we focus our attention on that, it's not ultimately gonna get us anywhere closer to what we want. Um, so yeah, I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense, and I know it's not easy for us to drop the condition of time, uh, but in imagination, time is not a thing. Time doesn't exist. It's an illusion, right? So fix to instead that the two of you are already together in here, and just as best as you can, practice staying there. Practice keeping your attention fixed on that. Regarding revision, if we are revising something, how often are we supposed to revise? Only once or daily until we get our desire. Also, I heard that revision is excellent for ADHD. Is this true? um, I mean, it certainly can be. I was diagnosed with ADHD, which is uh, no longer an issue for me. Although I credit a lot of it to meditation. Though revision may have a lot to do with that. Yeah. Um, how often are we supposed to revise? Until that new memory is what comes up naturally for you. So if we want to revise something, we want to continue to imagine that new memory until that is what feels like it naturally happened that way. Until the new memory is kind of what takes precedent in your mind. That old memory should become, fuzzy, detached. You should start to notice that that feels like further away from you. It may sound kind of weird, but that's the general idea. When you recall the incident and the new memory is the first thing that pops up for you and it feels like, "Yep, that's what happened." That's how you know you've revised correctly, and you can, in that case, drop it and move on to something else. But you can revise as many times in the day as you want. Where's my spot? Is there a way to manifest changing someone's mind, like convincing a specific person into something? Absolutely. Absolutely, Mohammed. Yeah. Yeah. See them in imagination as having changed their mind. See them in your imagination as agreeing with, whatever you desire to experience and having that experience with them. Yeah, absolutely. You can manifest a different version of that person. One that is perhaps more in agreement of what you desire to experience. Yeah. I like this question. I like this username too. I'm a pineapple. Missy, if the imagination is the real reality, why does the 3D look so much more real in HD than the imagination? Thank you. Good question. Well, I mean, first, so we can have this human experience, it has to feel very real to us. Otherwise the gig is up, right? Talking about what God becoming man, right? Consciousness or awareness becoming man, essentially having to fall asleep, forget who we are so that we can have this human experience. We have to be convinced that the 3D is real, right? Uh, that said, the only reason that the 3D looks and feels more real is because we haven't exercised our imagination in a long time. When we were kids, we could get so enthralled in our imagination that it did feel like we were somewhere. Like we were able to get so wrapped up in our imagination. Uh, and then at some point, it was usually kind of stamped out of us, right? We need to stop dreaming. We need to get our head out of the clouds. We need to come back to the real world. Basically, we're turning into boring grown-ups. And the imagination works very much like a muscle. The less we exercise it, the weaker it becomes. Even Neville talked about this. He would say, like, your imagination is God keyed low, basically saying that it's not as, we're not using our imagination to the anywhere close to the capacity or potential that we could be. Um, because when I go into imagination, and there's many other people like this too, the experience there feels just as real and solid as if it were 3D. Like, I could not tell the difference, genuinely speaking. Neville was the same way. There's others that also get to the point where, the imagination becomes just as real as 3D. So, yeah, yeah. M Imagination is the actual reality. And with that understanding, we have to have that understanding first, or none of these teachings are gonna make any sense. And I do have a video coming about that tomorrow, so to help make sense of that. Damn it, how is it already almost noon? Urgh. Alright, I got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Where was I? Hi, Missy. Yesterday I got a manifestation after an hour of visualizing. Sweet. But what I'm confused about is I found myself reacting negatively after imagining, yet I still got the manifestation. Yeah, yeah. We don't have to be positive and happy and rainbows to get the manifestation. Um, the manifestation comes from knowing or believing or like that impression that is left, right? Like I can have a bad day, but still know that I'm married to someone. Like that's not going to change or waver, right? I this idea that we need to be happy or never react negatively, I mean, and again, I'm not sure if what you were reacting to was in relation to what you were aiming to manifest, like, or if you were reacting negatively to something else. But yeah, once impressed, once we have that assumption that this is done, that this is happening, it will happen. Yeah. Even if we were stressed or anxious or mad or what have you. Um, yeah. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, we don't have to be, like, positive and hippy dippy all the time for this to work. Like, no. We can enjoy margaritas and ice cream on the beach anytime in imagination. Hell yeah, Sarah, you know. You know. Yeah, we can have any experience in our imagination. And with exercise of this muscle, we can absolutely it will feel as real as if it were happening in 3D. Now, that's not to say that it needs to be that way in order to manifest. Let me be clear about that. Let me be clear. No, I'm just saying we are only using a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what our imagination is capable of. And thank you for the super chat, Xeon. I did not even see a notification for that. I'm so sorry. My rational mind seems to prevent me from living in my end state. I am always fighting in my mind and I'm tired. I just want to live in the end. Oh gosh, yeah, the voice of reason is not our friend here. The rational, logical mind is not our friend here. And in fact, um, that usually is the thing that keeps us from being able to live in the end. Uh, because as soon as we assume something new, as soon as we imagine something new, it's like almost immediately that rational mind comes up with all of these reasons why that's not possible and can't happen. Um, through this practice, you will get better and better at dismissing that. We don't have to listen to the rational mind. We don't have to listen to the logic and reason because it's all just us anyways. It's not an outside power that has like it's not an outside force that has power over us. That's ego. That's we can dismiss it basically. But if it helps, you can maybe change the perspective of how you are perceiving this. Instead of, imagining to try to get something, which can feel very much, which tends to invoke that rational mind and a lot of pushback. Instead, we are imagining for the sake of the experience to enjoy the experience of it, because we can always do that, and it feels really good to do so, right? Um, so yeah, dropping the notion that we're doing this to get the 3D change, and instead learning to imagine for the sake of enjoying it, exercising that imagination muscle, and just to see what we can do and what we are capable of and what we can truly enjoy there. Yeah, because by doing so, the 3D will change. That's the key, but we don't need to even concern ourselves with that part of it, right? So yeah, yeah. Try going to the end just because it feels good. There's likely some tension and anxiety because of the feeling like you need to do this perfectly or it's not going to manifest, which will also make it more challenging to actually relax and enjoy the imaginal act, right? Yeah. You don't need to also don't fight yourself. Don't fight it. Just observe it. Don't fight it. Because if think about it, we're fighting with ourself. Why would we do that? Yeah. We don't need to flip our thoughts. We don't need to do any of that. We can drop all of that. Yeah. Oh. No, you're welcome, Zion. You're welcome. I know the feeling too well. I remember that vividly. I remember the struggle. We can drop the fighting. We don't have to fight ourselves. Thank you, Sina. How to deal with frustration. Maybe allow the feelings. Yeah. Yeah. Don't try to bury or suppress your feelings. That's one of the worst habits that we can fall into, and especially in this community and with these teachings. We become fearful of our thoughts. We become fearful of our emotions and our reactions. And so we just try to suppress them. We try to bottle them. That's never going to help. In fact, it's likely just going to continue to compound until inevitably it will explode. So allow yourself to have a moment. Allow yourself to feel frustrated. Allow yourself to feel sad. Allow yourself to feel angry. It's okay. And Neville talked about this all the time too. He would say, if you need to explode, explode. Don't let the sun descend upon your anger, which just means once we are feeling better, we want to go back and revise. But yeah, we don't need to fear our feelings. Let's let it happen. You will all feel better by doing so. Happy Adoption Day. All the best to the kitties. Yes, all the best. No, they are all going to wonderful, wonderful homes. Yeah. I've personally met everybody. They're amazing. I couldn't ask for better arrangements. So, and that also means I have room for a new litter now. Gotta love this world. And on that note, you guys, I do unfortunately have to get going, but thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for joining. Amazing questions today. And my apologies, I could not get to everybody here, but much love to all of you regardless. I will be back here next Sunday, so I hope you all are able to join. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and never forget where your power lies. Much love to all of you. Bye, guys.